Well, the National Basketball League for 2018 has decided this coming Sunday afternoon, and of course our own SIT Zero Fee Southland Sharks are up there for Final Four weekend. Let's bring the man who's in the thick of it all, the New Zealand Herald and NZHoops classic NBL podcast host, Niall Anderson, joins us on the show. Mate, we've got a really good weekend ahead of us, four very evenly matched teams. You can't say that always about Final Four, but you've got four sides, I guess, that are lining up this weekend, probably thinking to themselves they've got a realistic shot of winning the thing.
Yeah, that's a change because if you recall last year, I believe all the games were decided by 30 points, and even though you kind of talked yourself into it, it was always going to be to beat the Saints, who were unbeaten throughout the whole season and really dominant. But this year, every team's kind of had their flaws, they had their ups and downs, and it took a while to decide who was going to be playing who in these semi-finals. And certainly, even though the Hawks might be just a smidgen below the other three sides, the Sharks, the Giants, and the Saints can all go in there thinking that they deserve title favoritism, and it's really tough to call. It's going to be a very exciting weekend.
Yeah, no, that it is. So we'll work through, and we better start in the south, of course, with our boys, the Southland Sharks. I mean, how nervous should we be after that performance on Sunday in Invercargill, where the Giants really wiped the floor against us?
It's hard to say because I was interested in what was going to happen in that one. Both sides played their guys, played their starters, but I was kind of wondering, do you hold some things back? Because it was known at that time that they were going to play each other again in the semi-finals. So maybe you kind of keep a few things back. You don't show your whole cards in that game. And so I don't want to read too much into that game, but it's not hiding that, the Giants are going to be a tough matchup for the Sharks. So they kind of match up pretty well. The Sharks probably have them on talent. Like the Sharks are a very deep side, very talented side, but the Giants do match up quite well against them. So it's really, really tough to call. I can't quite pick either way in this one.
Yeah, no, it's not an easy one. I mean, there was no doubt that through the first, I'd say, 3 quarters of the season, and I know you boys were making this point on your podcast regularly, week after week. The Sharks were probably the most consistent and most impressive side in the competition. There just seems to have been the odd speed wobble over the last sort of couple of weeks. What do you think?
Yeah, it has been a bit surprising. Obviously, losing to the Jets was the real shock of the season as a whole, really, the entire NBL season. That was a big upset because the Sharks had been the most consistent. They had that run of games in Invercargill where they, won, I think it was 5 in a row by 20 points or more, and it meant that their starters didn't really have to play too many minutes, but now they're kind of getting into the crunch end of the season, and the other teams have caught up with them. They're kind of showing the same inconsistency that the Saints and the Giants have shown at times, and hopefully they manage to right the ship in time because it will be interesting to see, have they been holding things back? Have they got their starting five all ready to go? Is Alex Fledger going to be like the Alex Fledger we saw earlier in the season and the Alex Fledger we saw later in the season? So there's some question marks there, but it's going to be pretty tight, and I think the Sharks are certainly as good a shout as any team to run deep in these finals, but not quite as convincing as they have been to start.
I mean, the Giants, we got a first-hand look at it, obviously, on Sunday at ILT Stadium. Damon Hire just catching fire, and those two Aussie guards are there. Kyle Adnam, of course, the other one too. Finn Delaney, boy, there's been some growth there, hasn't there, over the last couple of seasons. So they've got scoring options across the floor too, haven't they?
Yeah, they have, and they've got a lot of depth. The Saints-Hawks matchup is kind of one where there's not too much depth. When you look at the Sharks-Giants, especially in the forward position, the Sharks go very deep in the forwards, and so do the Giants, and that's probably going to be a very good battle. Can Alex Fledger cope with the shooting and the speed of Finn Delaney and Tory Smith-Milner, but then can the Giants keep the likes of Alex Fledger and James Hunter off the glass? It's going to be very interesting. And do the Sharks also maybe throw some smaller lineups at them? Because the Giants, they have a lot of forwards, but they don't really have anyone who's bigger than about 6'8", 6'9". So maybe you could get away with having, the likes of Orlando Coleman and Connor Morgan playing a lot of minutes at those forward positions. So it's going to be a game of strategy, and I think the Giants do have a lot of options, and it's going to be interesting to see, can Jared Weeks shut down Kyle Adnam, and can he bully him on the offensive end as well? It's going to be pretty interesting. And Ruben Tarangi too. Can he, he's had a very good defensive season, but offensively he hasn't really had that many outbursts. It would be a perfect time to do so in the finals.
That it would, no doubt about that, mate. Right, what about the other two teams? I mean, the Wellington Saints, probably to be fair to them, we should have started there, the defending champion as well, the top qualifier as well, but it's been a very different Saints season than the one we saw, of course, in their undefeated run of last year. I mean, what's your take? Hard to go past them, really, I suppose, though, isn't it, still, with all that experience that they've got and can call on?
Yeah, it's interesting because the Saints, they had, obviously they're not as good as last year, and they were really iffy to start the season. They needed Shaylee to dig them out of a few holes to get some victories, across the line in the fourth quarter, and they have gotten better as the season progresses, but they don't have much depth, which means if there is foul trouble to say Shea Ali and Majuka, if there's an injury, then they're in some real trouble. And that's going to be the really interesting thing for me, is can they actually, do they have enough for these final series? And what probably gives them the favouritism is that they're going to have the game against the Hawks, where they are going to be favourites, and that means they're more likely to make the final than either the Sharks or the Giants. Have got an easier path to the final. But once they get to the final, the Sharks have beaten them both times this season. The Giants got one over them as well. So I think if they do get to the final and run into the Sharks or the Giants, then they could be in trouble, because I think the Sharks and the Giants have what it takes to topple the Saints. But obviously, against the Hawks, they're probably about a 70% favourite, so they probably do still deserve favouritism, but they're going to have to watch out, because I think, especially if your Sharks down in Southland manage to get into that final, they've had the wood over them for a while now, so I reckon it could be a very interesting situation if they meet again in the final.
And the Hawks themselves too, I mean, they've had a good run of home games to round themselves into form, really, heading into final, so there's a wee bit of momentum coming out of the Hawke's Bay for this weekend, I reckon.
Yeah, they've won, I think, 6 in a row, and that was because of their schedule, where they played pretty much all the top 4 teams in the first half of the season. They played all the bottom 4 teams in the second half of the season. So they're managing to get on a roll, and obviously at the start of the season they had a bit of an import drama as well. Imports coming in, imports coming out, but now they're pretty settled, and they do have the guns to take down Wellington if things go well. They're going to have to shoot well, of course, and Angus Brand is going to have a good game, but it's probably going to be a low-scoring one. I'd imagine it's probably going to be a bit of a battle with this game compared to the Sharks and the Giants, which I think will be pretty high-scoring and entertaining. I think this one will be more grinded out, going into the post. Who's going to get the most points down low? And I think that for the Hawks, their shooters like Bartlett and Kenny and Brewster and all those guys, if they're on, then it's going to be very tricky for the Saints to get over the line in this one. So yeah, they're probably just a smidge below the other side in terms of title favourites, but certainly they're not like last year. It's not like they're a 5% chance of winning. They're probably about a 30% chance of winning this game.
Fascinating weekend, no doubt about that. It would be remiss of me, not that I really want to, because it's not a great look for the league and finals week. It would be remiss not to talk about the story, and I know you've been all over it at NZ Herald, and this, of course, is the betting allegations that are starting to flow around with a very peculiar ending to one of the regular season games featuring the Rangers and the Airs as well. Mate, it's not a great look for the league, especially at the business end of the year, is it?
No, it's not great timing, but you've got to report these things when they come out, and certainly the Rangers are going to have to answer some questions, and they are being investigated for these allegations at the end of the game, where they took a timeout with 2 seconds to go when they led by 9 to hit a 3-pointer, and the allegation that is being made is that one of the popular bets you can make at the TAB is for a team to win by 11+, and from what we're hearing, there have been some rumours about those bets, and people saying Rangers players on the court talking about how much money they were going to make, and that's obviously not a very good look, and undetermined whether it will be proven. There are obviously all still allegations at this point, but yeah, not the greatest timing for the league, but that's what happens, and you've got to take them as they come. It's certainly just going to be the positives and the negatives this week. There's going to be a lot of positive chat about the Final Four and some really good games we've got coming up, but also got to monitor this, and certainly it'd be a bad look for the league if those allegations are proven to be true.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Hey, good stuff, mate. Doing great work as always. Good to check in, and we'll see you in Wellington this weekend.
Absolutely, look forward to it, Nick.
There you go, Niall Anderson joining us from NZ Herald and the classic NBL podcast as well. Well worth a listen, including their big preview for the Final Four, which is up right now. More in a moment, coming here on the All Sports Breakfast, Newstalk ZB.